This is Defenders TV Podcast episode 65, looking at Daredevil season 2, episode 9, 7 Minutes in Heaven. Welcome back, Defenders, to this episode of Defenders TV Podcast, where we are looking at episode 9 of Daredevil, 7 Minutes in Heaven. And I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek. Lots of numbers in this episode.
A lot of numbers.
Season 2, episode 9, 7 Minutes in Heaven. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think the Punisher was truly in heaven.
Yeah, I think most of the other inmates were in hell, though.
I think so. Maybe orgasmic?
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, 7 Minutes in Heaven comes from an old game, doesn't it? From schoolyard game or a school party game where you get 7 minutes to kiss a girl in a closet. Nothing unusual about that at all.
No, but here we have the Punisher's equivalent of that, where, yeah, he puts a lot of people in hell. Quite literally.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And of course, yes, we will get to that in our podcast. And if you are joining us for the first time, it's just to say that we cover each episode of Daredevil and all the other Marvel shows and films that we follow by looking at our 5 main points. They can be good, indifferent, or bad on the episode, the film, and so we will run through our 5 discussion points for this episode of Daredevil.
Absolutely. You may have also noticed that Chris, unfortunately, is not with us for this episode. He will be back with us very soon, but unfortunately has been taken a little ill this week, so get better soon, Chris. You will be joining us soon, I'm sure, for our next episode.
Absolutely. We're kind of flip-flopping here on the podcast. I was away last week and Chris stood in for me. And this week, Chris unfortunately can't be with us, but I'm back in the chair, ready for action. And of course, you can always find us and subscribe to us on defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Please subscribe there, leave a review, and all reviews are welcome. It helps other people find the podcast and of course gives us really good feedback as to how we're doing. And of course, remember, if you're not an iTunes kind of person, well then you can go to any other good podcast catcher and search Defenders TV Podcast. And of course, again, subscribe, leave a review if you can. That will be most appreciated.
Absolutely. And we're also putting our episodes up on YouTube at the moment, just in case that's an easier way for you to access the episodes. Just go and find us on YouTube. Just again, search Defenders TV Podcast.
And we have gotten some reviews in from iTunes. One by Tempo JT from Australia in April, titled Fantastic Listening! They say, thanks guys, you're doing an awesome job. Love the enthusiasm and passion along with the informative critical analysis. I find the comparisons to the comics really interesting as I have not read them. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much, Tempo JT, for the feedback, and it's really good to get that feedback, and we hope we keep it up as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, great to hear from you. Another Australian listener, always good to get them.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for that. We also got another review in from It Could Be Bunnies from USA, another great handle over on iTunes.
Yeah.
This one was titled Great Podcast for Fans of Jessica Jones and Daredevil. They say, I found this podcast recently after the release of the 2nd season of Daredevil. The podcast is well done with good sound and editing. I enjoy listening to the host discuss the characters and the overall look and feel of the shows. I listen while I clean the house and it makes the time fly by. I plan to join the Facebook group. Thanks very much, It Could Be Bunnies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much again for the feedback. It's just really nice. Really appreciate you taking the time out to write a review and send in that feedback, and obviously subscribing to iTunes as well into the mix. And again, thank you as well to Tempo JT. Again, really appreciated the time taken out.
Yeah, definitely, and thanks so much for listening. It's really good to hear from listeners around the world who are listening to our dulcet tones, and thanks for complimenting me on the editing. I do try.
Absolutely.
I think that's all out of the way, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think let's delve into this wonderful episode.
Yeah, this bloody violent episode.
Yes, it was, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode was directed by Steven Surgic, who's done tons of work in the Marvel Netflix universe. Obviously, he directed Shadows on the Glass and Guilty as Sin this season, which was the last episode. He also directed 2 episodes of Jessica Jones, Sandwich Saved Me and You're a Winner, which I think I mentioned last time, but sure, I'll mention them again. Definitely good to remind everybody that we've got a connected universe, at least on the director's side of the table for Netflix. The episode was written by Daredevil showrunner Marco Ramirez and by Lauren Smith Hisrich, who has written Kinbaku, one of your favorite episodes of the season so far, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I can honestly say, is another one of my favorite episodes.
Excellent. Well, do you want to tell us what they gave us with this episode, John?
Sure. As Wilson Fisk introduces himself to Frank Castle, he makes an offer that proves too tempting for the Punisher. Fisk gives him 7 glorious minutes with Mr. Dutton, the man who brokered the deal between the Irish, the cartel, and the Dogs of Hell on the day of the massacre of Castle's family. In return, Fisk asks for the elimination of Dutton as his main rival in prison. As chaos breaks out in the prison, Fisk attempts to betray Castle, but his plan fails, forcing him to negotiate. Fisk seeks an opportunity and smuggles the Punisher from jail, so he can pursue his new lead, the blacksmith.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, Foggy and Murdoch question the future of their firm following their disastrous defense of Frank Castle and reluctantly agree to part ways. But Karen won't give up so easily. As she persists with investigating the truth about the Carousel massacre, she finds a shocking new piece of evidence that she uses to entice the New York Bulletin to assist in her research. Back at Matt's apartment, Matt also parts ways with Elektra Natchios over her indifference to killing, just as a resurrected Yakuza leader from Daredevil's past lends credence to Stick's claim of immortality.
2 episodes, 2 huge reveals at the end of the episode, and before that it was just a gigantic hole. We thought that was going to be a huge reveal. Last week we had Wilson Fisk, and this week we have... Can we say it now?
I think we can. It is spoilery and spoiler-filled, of course. We have Nobu
We have Nobu back,
Yeah,
yes.
so cool.
Peter Shikoda,
I loved the scarring on his face. That was pretty awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. Really, really good. So who wants to kick off the first point? Do you want to go first, John?
Yeah, no, my first point, and I'm just going to say it out loud, is the Kingpin of Prison. We have Wilson Fisk returning in all his Machiavellian and conniving best. For me, this was just like a warm, comforting duvet to put around me. I absolutely loved the reveal in the last episode of Wilson Fisk. And here again, Vincent D'Onofrio is just, for me, absolutely great. He shows that kind of frightened child with his rage, with, as I say, his manipulation of all things around him. And I love that he is making his way up in the world once again, but this time in the underworld of prison politics and business and leadership. And for me, it was awesome.
Absolutely. Did you see how much he was bench pressing at the beginning of this episode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I know we knew he was powerful in last season. We knew he was strong, but that's like 3 people that he's lifting up.
Yeah. And I loved how his negotiation, as I said in the synopsis, was really kicking out of the Punisher. I mean, he picked him up and flung him down. He punched. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Punisher was expecting that he was essentially going to come up against this brick wall. Whatever about size, he's also pretty brutal and uncompromising is Fisk, as well as the Punisher.
Certainly.
I wondered whether there was a bit of, kindred spirit being recognized there by the Punisher as well, because, okay, you said, well, if I see you again, only one of us is going to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And Fisk returns the compliment with, yes, I look forward to it. Like, I'm not afraid. And I think that is something that the Punisher, quite frankly, respects.
Certainly, yeah.
But I loved Wilson Fisk here. I loved his, machinations, with his lawyer. I loved the fact that he starts building a crew in prison. He's got the 2, Latino guys who are his muscle. But then, and this is one of the other things from this, is Stooge Finnery. I think he was the mortgage and financial broker. but is he the new Wesley?
Yeah.
Because this seems to me to be sort of him establishing a new loyal second in command, this time in prison. Really, really liked that. And I loved how, he's using his resources on the outside to get what he wants on the inside, to remove Dutton, to become the head of the prison trade and contraband. Really cool.
Yeah, you've got to wonder if Dutton hadn't come to Fisk's cell and said to him, there's only one kingpin in here, and that's me. You won't even get a look in. I wondered, would Wilson have actually run with his plan this quickly after getting into prison? He says specifically that he wants to keep his head down and just do his time. But I think just the challenge there that he wouldn't get a look in and wouldn't be the kingpin of prison just pushed the plan a lot quicker. You see him saying that he might dip into the fund potentially that Vanessa needs to survive, in order to enable him to become the kingpin of the prison. But it looks like he may not need to now. No need for that when Dutton has been stabbed and pretty badly damaged by the attack by the Punisher. But yeah, I love the plan from Kingpin. Didn't expect to see, Frank holed up inside a room with a ton of other prisoners, after doing exactly what the Kingpin wanted,
No, absolutely. I mean, I love the seething, the internal seething. You could just feel it from Wilson Fisk. Again, portrayed so well by Vincent D'Onofrio. I love the seething that comes from him as Mr. Dutton says, there's only one kingpin around here.
Yeah.
Like, you can just sense it from the performance. It was really, really good. And I do have to say as well, one of our listeners, and one of our members of our Facebook group, David Wang, he did say, how are you able to leave it for a week once you see the reveal of Wilson Fisk? I think he says you're going to really enjoy this next episode. And I was kind of chomping at the bit because obviously, Derek won't allow us to watch the episode.
Absolutely. It would ruin our podcast if we did.
But it was worth the wait. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, it all, just is so reminiscent of Ed Brubacker's run on Daredevil, where Wilson Fisk is operating behind prison. I think it's at Rikers Island, actually.
Yeah.
And he's really just dictating the city of New York from behind prison. And in fact, ultimately, Matt Murdock ends up there with him. So I wonder if that might have some connection here to maybe how this season's going to end. And the reason I say that is because it does link in and ties in with Iron Fist. So, who kind of takes up the mantle of Daredevil, just briefly to try and exonerate, Matt Murdock to show that he wasn't the Daredevil, by being present in New York fighting crime. So it could be a nice little tie-in between these 4 different series that are on Netflix, leading to the Defenders. So it'd be really good, I think, if that's the case. But I love that run from Ed Brubaker. So I mean, yeah, definitely catch it if you can. At your local comic book store. I think it's in collected omnibus edition now.
Is, yeah.
Or you can just search Comixology or one of those digital readers
I think it's probably on Marvel Unlimited as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great run. Really, really enjoyed that run of the comic books as well. But yeah, staying on that side of the house, that was one of my first points, was obviously our reintroduction to the Kingpin. I like that it really did take up immediately after the end of season 1, even though it's taken 9 episodes to get to Vincent D'Onofrio coming back. I love the fact that it took up directly afterwards. You have that wonderful moment where he's being told to take off everything that belongs to him, to take off his suit, and you see those hugely important cufflinks being taken off and put into the box on their own, the cufflinks that he took from his father. Thought that was quite interesting, just making sure that we are reminded of how important this is to Wilson, that he's being stripped down to nothing before going into this prison, that he's getting all those things taken away from him that he got when he became the kingpin of crime, those good suits that he got from Vanessa, the cufflinks that he got from his father and from Vanessa's guidance. Thought that was quite interesting to do it that way.
Yeah, I absolutely love the little hint back to the cufflinks as he takes them off and puts them in the tray. That was really nice. I love the rabbit in the snowstorm reference from season 1, where essentially he's looking at the white walls of the cell.
That's right. Where we left him last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, really, really good. And I loved then just that, newbies were white here, and he's there in white. By the end, he's in orange. He has assumed the mantle of Kingpin in the prison. So it's just really good. I think one of the officers just smacks his baton across the back of his head, and I'm wondering whether he's really survived beyond this episode. I kind of thought we're going to see him sort of get his comeuppance.
Yeah, I know
I
what you mean.
really liked as well just the fact that it was played with, I'm going to, as you say, stay in here, do my time, and ultimately he gets all these other people to do his work for him.
Absolutely.
And he's obviously buying off people in prison, not just fellow prisoners, but it would seem the prison guards as well. And so in order to buy the Punisher, that 7 minutes are in heaven. So really, really cool, I thought, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love his first dealings with Frank, where Frank again uses his catchphrase now. Says, I don't help shitbag has been mob bosses. Really good. And Wilson just kind of ears perk up with what do you mean has been? Really cool kind of dealing with these two. John Bernthal, we've said it before, he is great in this part, but seeing him stand toe to toe, or a little bit shorter, but almost toe to toe with Vincent D'Onofrio in this scene is something that I just wasn't expecting from the season, and it delivered in spades. Absolutely brilliant. But can we go on to my next point?
Yeah, definitely.
Because we've mentioned it a few times. It has to be the 7 minutes in heaven itself, right?
Oh, wow. It was so good.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned a few times. I think Chris particularly has mentioned a few times. What is this season's hallway scene? What's the moment this season that's reminiscent of the big hallway scene in episode 2 of season 1? This is the scene that is the hallway scene, right? This is the Punisher's version of the hallway scene where he just batters everything around him in a pretty one-take shot.
Absolutely. This is the Punisher's corridor fight in prison. And it is death that prevails, death, blood, and murder, and not knockdowns.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love it. The contrast, the reflection on how Daredevil operates as to how the Punisher operates, really, really cool. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, just fascinating to see the difference between the two. Again, you see the Punisher left alone in the hallway with these other villains, obviously men under the control of Dutton, who didn't realize Dutton had just been killed because Frank did his work quite stealthily, as he slaughtered 2 people in their cell. But
another throat slit as well. I mean, that is becoming a bit of a trademark now of this series, and it's so brutal. I mean, we had Elektra do it. Now we've got the Punisher do it. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, but you see him turn on his heels when he realizes the situation he's in and stare down this room full of pretty bad criminals, I presume. And he just seems to have that moment of kind of glee on his face, knowing that he's going to be able to take all these guys out. It seems to be a proper determination in him. He knew he was going to make it out of that cell, and he's going to take every single person with him, before he went.
When you say moment of glee, you didn't mean that he burst into song.
No, not that kind of glee. Luckily, I don't know whether Johnny Bernthal's voice would be good enough for that. I don't know.
He could do a raspy blues number, I reckon.
Yeah, he's got a proper baritone, I would say.
Definitely.
The Punisher the Musical coming soon, which is one thing we haven't mentioned.
Yes, that is true. Netflix have commissioned a standalone Punisher series on Netflix.
Yes, I can see why. With the just as we're talking about it, we'll pop it in here. But I can see why they'd be able to with the charisma of John Bernthal. I think he is pulling off this character really well. And one of the big concerns I would have had before this show was whether you could actually center a show around someone like Frank Castle. I think they're setting up the kind of the empathy that you need to have with Castle. They're doing quite well through Karen's storyline with him and through Foggy's storyline with him. You're kind of learning a bit about him where you're able to kind of accept when he goes into a room full of villains that he kills them. And you're kind of able to accept it because he doesn't kill people that don't warrant it. This particular scene, okay, maybe not the best example of that because he doesn't know anything about the people that are in the room with him. What he does know is it's either them or him, and takes them all out. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with a Punisher season. I presume it's not going to affect Defenders. I presume it's going to happen as another show that's happening on Netflix, but really interested to see.
Yeah,
it.
definitely. And one that we will obviously be covering. Definitely. And I think, with the Punisher's fight, like, you do have, as well, maybe actually the Punisher's fight in the Punisher's own, series will replicate Daredevil's staircase fight, which was another great fight scene, in this season. Maybe it'll replicate that so that he'll do a massive kill fest on a stair hall or something like that.
It could be the raid, not in 13 episodes of Punisher trying to get out of a building, Or, in fact, the Judge Dredd movie, which was very similar to that as well.
Yeah, and one of the really good things as well was that after he's finished slaughtering them all, there is, or what appears to be, just this blood-soaked skull formation on his chest, which I thought was really cool. I love the fact that the police riot squad or the prison warden riot squad comes in to take him down, but you have Fisk there kind of realizing, oh, right, my betrayal hasn't worked here, but that he sees immediately another opportunity just to, get him on the streets, getting rid of his rivals, by the time he gets out of prison. So really, really interesting, I thought that.
Yeah, the bloody skull was really interesting. Yeah, it's kind of something that you only notice for a split second. I'm not sure if it was intended, but it has to be intended if it's the Punisher, right?
I thought so. I that's how I saw it on his chest. I thought it was really cool. I love the fact anyway that he was soaked in blood after this bloodbath. I think, did he get like something through his arm as well? Like, there was some really proper brutal things, neck snapping, stabbing, slicing, like
Dicing.
Axes, like some kind of axe weapon. So, I mean, like, Dutton really did have this prison totally under his control. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a prison guard in the slightest.
No way.
If that's what they kept under their pillows at night,
Yeah, no way. Certainly not in this prison. But yeah, wonderful scene. Really enjoyed it. And it was 7 minutes of heaven in this series for me, definitely. John, do you want to take us on to your next point?
Yeah. My next point is just taking up, what you said about Karen but sort of just expanding that out. It's more that the three amigos become three single amigos now. It's three become one, and they go off in their separate directions as individuals now. I thought this was really interesting, because as you're probably aware, like, I do like consequences to kind of persist a bit. I think it makes sense. It feels real then, and this to me is the reality of what Matt has done and how he's impacted on Foggy and Karen in spades. And I really like the fact that it's just been continued here. But I love, their different reactions as well. I mean, Foggy kind of almost resigns himself. He comes and says, they need to reconsider.
Yeah.
And Matt almost takes it away from him and says, no, we're done. We should close up. I have to accept who I am, and you need to accept me, and you obviously don't.
Yeah.
I loved how that, when Foggy comes to his door, though, that initial split second on his face, he is concerned about the wounds and asks, "Are you hurt?" And then gradually it just becomes more icy. The bridges have truly been burnt over the Frank Castle defense case. Like, it, unfortunately, and it'll be really interesting just to see how this evolves now. Does, Foggy go off on his own? Does he run for DA if, Reyes really gets in, trouble over the revelations that we hear from Dutton after that 7 minutes in heaven?
Yeah.
And I really like that. Foggy kind of ultimately resolves himself, to kind of closing down the law firm.
Yeah.
And seeing sort of, where is this gonna go? There is no more Nelson and Murdoch, he says to Karen, and we need to start thinking about life outside of this office. Will he become a butcher? Who knows?
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, I absolutely loved how Karen responded to it. In true determination and obsessiveness, she is driven once again. She still just can't let it go. It is the proverbial phrase, a dog with a bone. Like, it's just, she cannot let go.
Absolutely.
And I love how this moves through this episode. I really liked her determination here. And, you know, that how she's manages to come back to, the New York Bulletin as well, to the editor that's, she's been in contact before. And to be honest, just then that nod back to, Ben Urich's office and the file on his desk with Karen Page. Like, to begin with, I thought that was stuff that was meant for her on Wilson Fisk, but I think you said that, it actually showed, some newspaper cutting.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to bring it in my notes, but I might as well bring it in here. Yeah, you can clearly see that's a news story about an unexplained accident that killed a teenage boy. When you read the actual notes themselves, the teenage boy is Kevin Paston Page, a 16-year-old. So you'd presume this is Karen's younger brother, potentially, maybe a cousin, but most likely a brother, in her hometown, who's died in an accident where he went off the road and went through a chain link fence, and you can see from the photographs smacked into a wall and unfortunately seems to have been killed. Karen clearly by her response takes responsibility for this, but has gotten away with it. There's tons more in that file. That file is very, very packed full of things that have happened. So, very interesting to find out. And this is our first real inclination. I know we've been suggesting that storylines from the comic books will come back, as to what happens to Karen, in the future, but we haven't really talked about what happened in her past. They keep talking about a dark past over and over again. But here what we find out is that Ben knew exactly what was in her past, and that the editor of the New York Bulletin also knows completely what happened in her past, and there's a full file explaining it on the table. So hopefully we get further look into that in future, and see what it is that drove Karen to leave her hometown and come to New York, and see what it is that drives her all the time to look out for the little guy more so than her, I suppose, her position within the law firm would normally allow her to do as a receptionist. You know, she seems to be moving much more towards a legal secretary and now towards a reporter. So.
Yeah, and it really is a nice development for Karen Page. I think this move into the Bulletin, and I think, you know, it's certainly a thread that's occurred in the comics as well, where she is a reporter for a newspaper. Right. So, this to me is like a really nice development. And as I say, I love that kind of referencing back to Ben Urich. I really, just like the fact that, you know, she is dogmatic. She has something in her mind, but she is always looking for the truth. And they can't handle the truth, quote Jack Nicholson. Like, it's just really, really good. I love how she kind of persuades the editor, to sort of come on board with this. And I like the little interplay that they had with her, where he goes, like, I don't know where you're getting your leads from. Like, I've had 10 or so calls on where am I getting this information from? And she goes, what did you say to him? And he goes, I said it was me. Yeah. Like, I took the credit. Myself, like, I loved it. I just thought, absolutely. Yeah. Probably typical editor. I don't know. That might be harsh against editors, but like, I just thought that was a really nice little, sort of bit of banter between the two of them. I thought that was really good. Yeah.
Which kind of leads me on to my other point as well about how Karen joins New York Bulletin. I really like this idea that she's found something in all the photographs that she's been investigating. She's found this extra body. We talked about it on our episode about the actual criminal trial of Frank Castle, when the medical examiner was up on the stand and said, there was another record that he falsified along with Frank's family. And we were wondering whether it was Frank, because he doesn't explicitly say that it was Frank about the bullet wound in his head. It turns out it wasn't Frank. It turns out it was a John Doe, a body that was at the scene and then disappeared afterwards. So really excited to see who this was. What we do find out in this episode is that the person had tags. This was an undercover cop, potentially, or an undercover FBI agent, or potentially an undercover member of the team that's been wearing the black suits all the way throughout the series that we know nothing about yet. Really interested to see what's going to happen, and really like the idea that it's Karen that finds this out by her tenacity.
Yeah, definitely the men in suits have got to be FBI or some kind of special covert agency of the government.
Hammer, Shield, Hydra, some organizations that wear suits.
But FBI, like, he does call it out as an FBI sting, or so he thinks. I think Dutton says to the Punisher, because let's not forget that the Punisher also knows this information as well. Like, and the whole Fisk releasing this, like, pent up caged animal now back into New York to really extract more information, more terrible vengeance and fury upon his family's murderers is, like, really interesting. I mean, I do like how Fisk sort of offers that deal to Frank, and he's initially kind of reluctant to take it on board because he thinks he's dealing with the same scum.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the temptation that you can find out more about who did it, it's not just the Irish and the Dogs of Hell that are involved here. And so Dutton actually gives him that information before his death as well, that it was an FBI sting, or so he thinks. But then the medical examiner says there were tags on his body.
Yeah.
That he was an undercover cop or something. So it could be cops. Mm-hmm. Because that kind of speculates then that Reyes and the mayor are really much deeper in this massacre.
Yeah.
So
I think there's more to it. I really do. I think it's more to it than just cops.
Maybe. It's always Roxxon.
It's always Roxxon. They're always involved.
Hopefully it's AIM, actually.
Maybe. I would say it's likely to be Roxxon with their connection to the hand. And
I think they need a dose of yellow suits running around New York.
The yellow hazmat suits are coming soon.
That'd be brilliant.
That'd be great.
I love little AIM characters from Marvel Lego.
Yeah, definitely. They're cool.
Speak.
And on that, John, do you want to take us on to your next point?
Yeah, which is the blacksmith. Who is the blacksmith? I couldn't actually find anything on a Marvel character known as the blacksmith. I might
certainly
be
nothing significant.
Completely wrong here, but I mean, look, if anyone knows about the blacksmith, so to speak, that there's any references from any previous Marvel comics and graphic novels, then give us a shout at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. I would love to hear about it, but I didn't see anything at all. So yeah, as you say, is the blacksmith a figure of authority within, respectable authority, like police or FBI or something like that? Or is he another criminal mastermind from the underworld? Who is this blacksmith? It's really interesting. Is he part of the official sting operation? I just think this is really interesting now. Absolutely. It's really elaborating on this carousel massacre. And really how, as Dutton kind of explains, that he was just there as a broker. I love that idea that actually, okay, he's still doing something bad, but he was the middleman.
Yeah.
And Frank gave him absolutely no quarter. Mm-hmm. Whatever about going after the Irish, the cartels and the bikers, and taking them out. They were presumably the ones with all the guns, whereas he was kind of this independent person.
Yeah. I think you like to say that in your own story. I like how Dutton put it.
That's true.
I like how Dutton put it, which was, there are 100 guns and every one of them found a purchase. You'll never finish here, Frank. It's kind of the idea that, yes, okay, so there were some members of the cartel and some members of the Dogs of Hell that may have shot your family inadvertently, but every single person who had a gun in that location is responsible for the deaths of every other person that was in there. You've got a long road ahead of you, which I really liked. I thought that was a good little caution to Frank.
Yeah, it's a nice line, actually. But yeah, the blacksmith, intrigue, and it's all linked into heroin. And I mean, this is one of the common threads that is certainly in Daredevil.
Yeah.
It could potentially be a motivating factor with Luke Cage, given that, his past in the comics at least is suggestive of being a petty dealer or being embroiled and involved unwittingly in that whole arena. You have then with the heroin and the opium trade, you get the links to Madame Gao, the steel serpent symbol that we saw in season 1. Yeah. Obviously, all that trade with the Hand and the Yakuza being involved, that has the potential to link in also to Iron Fist. So this is one of those common threads that's really coming through these series to me, along with a few other things which, like the big urn with the symbolic scripts and writings there. Like, this is all getting nicely mysterious now. It's really getting intriguing what's in the urn and so on. But I think, first off, who is the blacksmith? You know, a lot of questions coming out in this episode. Really cool.
Absolutely. Those Japanese characters that are on the urn actually mean rebirth and resurrection, or rebirth and renewal, which I think was quite interesting. That was a nice little touch in the episode. And the urn itself was creepy as heck. It does lead me on to a little point that I had, which was just Stan the accountant, Matt tracking down Stan the accountant. It's the old Wire adage of follow the money and you'll find your way. So he tracks down Stan the accountant, whose son has been kidnapped by the hand to make him work for them, leading us to a great scene where we get again another expansion of the world, where we have all of these kids, or all of these hostages who are being drained of their blood for the gigantic urn, which is the secret to immortality, I presume, is held within that urn. I thought that was really interesting. And there's one little touch that's in there, which is Stan's son when he gets taken out. I was convinced this was actually going to be a moment with Danny Rand potentially, in there. He looks so like my idea of Iron Fist, the long blonde hair, thin looking wiry guy. I thought that was going to be a little Easter egg for us in there, but no connection at all, unfortunately. So it's not Stan Rand. I presume that's not Danny's father.
No, maybe not. But like the rebirth, resurrection on the side of that urn, it is really interesting, because the Iron Fist arcs, a lot of them are all to do with rebirth and rejuvenation. In terms of the Iron Fist himself, who is renewed, and there are new Iron Fists, and people take up the mantle of the Iron Fist in the lost city of Kunlun. Like, they have to go and fight Shu Lao, the Undying, which is the dragon, right. To get the Iron Fist power and energy for essentially its superpower.
Right.
And so one of the things I'm wondering that maybe in the urn is, you know, on the one hand, we have seen the steel serpent symbol. And of course, there's Davos, who could be master of the cranes. There's also the mother of the cranes, who could be Madame Gao. But one of the other aspects could be the Chi Lin, which goes after to try and kill the Iron Fist every time they have been renewed as well. And I think in the Immortal Iron Fist series, it's all kind of bound together now in 3 volumes, you really do have this kind of amorphous thing that is reborn and changes shape as well. So it becomes a really powerful enemy of Iron Fist. And of course, his sole aim is to destroy the Iron Fist and to kill them. So I'm wondering if, you know, maybe this is one aspect of the hand, that they're trying to destroy that power, which could ultimately stop them. I don't know. It's a complete and utter over-the-top theory from my point of view, but I just think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it'd be great if it's setting up some of the stuff that we're going to see in Iron Fist when it comes next year. It definitely feels like this is something that belongs in the Iron Fist universe, and it does belong within Daredevil. They are connected as characters as well. The Hand being hugely important Daredevil villains, obviously Elektra being involved, and Stick, and as we said last time, Stone, and all of those characters as well. All connected in this universe, and really interesting to see something much more spiritual and much more unusual here. The reaction in this scene, I suppose, of Matt to the return of Nobu is huge. You know, the reaction of, wow, okay, Stick was correct. This is someone that came back from the dead. It's a shocking moment, really, for Matt. a real surprise as a member of the audience, obviously watching it as well. I'm sure everybody was surprised when they watched this episode to see Nobu back. But delighted to see him back.
Oh, absolutely. So cool to have him back. I love the fact that he's got his knives on the end of the chain as well, his signature weapon that obviously caused Daredevil so much pain and agony.
And the fact that he calls it out too, you have some scars to remember me by, the way it should be. We have unfinished business, and then as he leaves, he says,
the rising is coming. You are not the only devil in this city. Really, foreboding, really. And absolutely loved it. Really gives just a whole extra dimension to this. And I actually do really like the fact that it's grounded this kind of, spiritual and maybe mystical element. It is grounded, in sort of the heroin trade, gangland warfare.
Heroin brings you back to life?
No, but like it's everyday things that are grounding this in the real world, even though it is not of this world. That it's those criminal things. And I mean, let's face it, the Defenders ultimately as a body are different from the Avengers. They are disparate groups of people, generally individuals, that come to protect Earth from more mystical elements. Those threats that aren't necessarily supervillains or I suppose aliens ultimately. But these deal with more mystical, different realms, dimensions, you name it. Those different types of threats facing the world. So it really fits into that nicely, and does have to build that kind of notion within the world, just as obviously Doctor Strange is doing that within the film world. And I do hope that these two collide in a lovely kaleidoscope of many different colours.
Absolutely. John, do you have a final point?
No, Nobu was one of my, other points as well, that he lives, and I'm so pleased that he's back. Really am. I love the fact that it was probably the worst blood transfusion service ever in the history of medical sort of blood transfusion. I mean, this looked like, okay, they may have just been rescued, but I suspect they might die out because of infection.
Absolutely.
Like, this was pretty brutal. And bizarrely, I slightly felt sorry for the accountant here, with the fact that his son, was being trussed up. I just thought they had him captive, but treating him pretty well. Not that he was caged and being sucked dry of his blood.
Exactly. It does show the intention of the Hand as well. They're telling him that you work for us, or else we'll kill your son. And what they're doing to his son is far worse, really, than killing him. It's well, maybe not far worse. He may live this way, but it is pretty brutal. I know exactly what you mean. For my final point, there is the other breakup in the episode that we didn't really talk about, which is the breakup of Elektra and Matt.
That is true. Yes. She killed when she was only a wee toddler.
Yeah. What a fascinating story. What an interesting insight into Elektra, effectively, that she is an assassin. This is that's her subtitle, I suppose, in the comic books. Her name is Elektra Natchios. Her subtitle is The Assassin. So really interesting to see that she killed for the first time at 12. Not for any reason, not for defending herself, not for protecting herself or anybody else. It turns out that she enjoyed it, and she's lived with that ever since. I love the discussion between the two of them where Matt says to her, we need to get away from each other. We have to stop corrupting each other. That's what happens. I love you. I know you love me, but we are corrupting each other. Really interesting lines. And then he says to her, this is a war that I need to fight alone. I need you out of the way, and then I can do my job, or else we're going to continue to pull each other down. But really, really interesting. I'm very doubtful that either Stick or Elektra are staying away for very long, to be honest. I think they're going to come back. This is their war that Matt is kind of infringing upon, but he's sending them away because they've come to his city, as he keeps saying. There's no way they're giving up this war. They are the protectors. They are the chaste. They are the ones that are supposed to be protecting the world from the Hand. So they'll be coming back to join up with Matt, whether he likes it or not.
Definitely. I mean, I really sort of enjoyed the fact that, when she's pressed on this whole killing. Matt Murdock goes, did you enjoy it? And she goes, no, I did it so that I knew that I could. Like, a really interesting question, because there was possibly up until then which thought that she did this out of enjoyment, and that's why she became an assassin. But it is, it gives a feeling of a destiny or a fate that has been bestowed upon her, which, she had to make sure that she could do. And I think that fits in with some lore around Elektra, that, this isn't by accident that she has become the assassin, that there's very much a, she's identified as being this master assassin, and that's what she is trained and becomes. Yeah. I don't know Elektra's storyline that well, to be honest, but, it's something that I'm really enjoying seeing. I love the hot and cold between Matt and Elektra. And yeah, no doubt Hot will come back, into this relationship.
Definitely.
At some point. I think it really as well just closes the circle with Stick, and the fact that Matt was very dismissive of Stick's claim to this power to raise the dead, of immortality that the Hand had found back in the day. And I think that this really is a nice way of bringing these back together. And it almost, it makes sense then with the splitting up of the three, because this is taking Matt in a completely different direction. This is not getting the mugger or the diamond thief that we saw at the start of this season.
Absolutely.
This has suddenly moved his territory into a whole new level.
A realm.
Or new realm. Yeah. And this really now does take him to a different place to some extent, compared to Foggy and Karen.
Certainly.
And it makes sense that their stories would diverge as such then here. And it'll be interesting to see how that works, as well. So, so many threads here that I'm enjoying. It's just crazy.
Definitely. And one other thing I really liked about the scenes with Elektra and Matt is that they do have cleaners that come around and take away the bodies and clean up Matt's house and get it back to pristine condition while he's knocked out. I just thought it was really interesting that that's how the episode started. I loved seeing it through Matt's eyes, as he wouldn't, I suppose, that it's all going on around him and he's hearing things. He doesn't know what he's hearing, but he can tell that something's going on, around him all the way through it. I thought that was really, really good, as a nice start to the episode. So we ended at the start, with our 5 points, about this episode. Any notes about the episode, John?
Yeah, I have, just one. I love the fact that, Fisk is with Dutton as he slowly drowns in his own fluids in his lungs.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I say he's rubbing salt into the wounds, but Fisk is actually putting salt onto his meat and two veg as Dutton slowly, not those meat and two veg, I hasten to add, but that he slowly chucking salt and pepper onto his dinner as he sits next to Dutton saying, "What did you say again, ultimately?" I really, really thought this was just a nice kind of Shakespearean type of moment within this episode, really just rubbing his face in it,
The kind of, don't you worry, I'll be right here while you die.
Exactly. Yeah. I just thought it was so good.
Totally brutal.
So malicious of Wilson Fisk to do that. Brilliant.
Yeah, totally brutal. One other note from me, which is just about Ben Donovan, the lawyer for Wilson Fisk, the guy who's carrying out all of his orders. Ben Donovan was a character that was created for Luke Cage, back in the 70s. So it is likely or very possible that we'll see that character back, when Luke Cage could be having some trouble with the law in his own series starting later on in the year.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was quite cool. Quite an interesting one. I like these little side characters. But unfortunately, we did look it up. There is no Dutton in the comic books. We don't see anything about the blacksmith in the comic books. Not a huge amount of the other characters. There's no Stooge Finney as far as I could see, that's in the comic books. But please correct us if we're wrong. Please send us an old email then to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or come and join us over on our Facebook group just go to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. So that only leaves us with one last thing to do on this episode. John, do you defend this episode of Daredevil? Season 2, Episode 9, 7 Minutes in Heaven.
Yeah, I strongly defend this episode of Daredevil. I would give this 4.5 shivs out of 5 as they plunge repeatedly into the stomach of Mr. Dutton. This is absolutely great, bloody, vindictive Daredevil. We have the return of Wilson Fisk, which is just like, oh my goodness, brilliant. Love Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal. Have we found the new Wesley in Stooge Finnery? I really hope so. He's the intelligence there, in that sense. And what I mean by intelligence, I mean good intelligence, not bad intelligence. He is, he's the new Wesley, possibly, being introduced here, which I really liked. The Wesley behind the bars. You had the breakup of Nelson and Murdoch, attorneys at law. You have, the three principal characters, moving and splitting apart, diverging into their own, separate, ways. Obviously, Daredevil looking at a completely different challenge now on the scene in Hell's Kitchen with the return of Nobu. Again, absolute favorite of mine. So good to see him there. Loved the scar, loved his weapons. Loved that sort of brief little, foray into, again, combat between the two of them. Not for very long, but just enough. There's going to be something that comes back again.
Certainly.
In another episode. You have Karen determined as ever to find out the truth. Absolutely loved it. And I thought it was just really poignant moving into Ben Urich's office to continue her research under the wing of the New York Bulletin. And then finally, I suppose one of the main questions here is, what is in that urn? What is Foggy going to do? Is he still going to be a butcher? Or is he going to put his hand to being possibly the new DA in town when Reyes, maybe hits the buffers in her rise to the top, as she gets found out. And we obviously, in connection with that, we find out a bit more about Frank Castle, his motives. That bloody fight, amazing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. And we get to hear some more info. FBI sting, or is it the blacksmith? Who is he, she, it? Fantastic. Loads of intrigue. Just a really, 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 good episode. Solid. Well, fantastic episode. Sorry, I'm really underselling it here. Really, really cool.
I think this could be close to a 4.9 for you, John.
It probably could, but I don't know whether I ever really go that high. Although you did kind of say 4.8 last week on my behalf.
Yes.
But I didn't tell you to say that.
That's very true. Very true.
But on that basis, I would give it a 4.9 then.
Right. Very good. Very good.
Derek, do you defend this episode of Daredevil?
Totally, absolutely. You've said everything I wanted to say. There's so much going on in this episode. I love the breakup of Elektra and Matt, as well as the breakup of Matt and the rest of his team around him. He's trying to be the lone wolf. He's trying to do what Stick originally told him to do, which is keep away from all of your friends. Don't have any attachments. He's trying to break all that up around him. I just don't believe that it's going to happen the way he wants it to. I believe that Elektra's going to come back. Stick's going to come back. Foggy will absolutely come back. This wouldn't be a Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson story if they didn't break up at some point and get back together at some point. They will get back together in the future, but maybe it'll be after the big battle. Maybe it'll be at the end of episode 13 that'll kind of wrap it up. They'll get back together. Things look very bleak, but I like it. I like it where it is right now. The scenes between Vincent D'Onofrio and John Bernthal in the prison itself, I thought were fantastic. Some of the best scenes so far this season.
Absolutely.
Just seeing them go toe to toe, as I mentioned, just so good. The idea that Kingpin, within a few days and a bit of cash, he's got everybody under his thumb. So many of the guards are in there. There was a question that I had when John Bernthal's leaving, or when Frank Castle's leaving the prison. He takes off the riot helmet that is protecting who he is before he leaves the prison. He takes it off directly outside the front gate. In fact, before he gets to the front gate, does Wilson Fisk have every single person in the prison, under his
probably
in his wallet or in his pocket, I guess you'd say? Does he have everybody, or was that just a slight problem with the episode, or does Frank not care? Would anybody stop Frank after what he did inside the prison? Really, really good though. I loved the episode overall. Totally enjoyable.
No, absolutely. This was like 54 minutes in heaven for the audience. Absolutely fantastic. And again, like moving on to episode 10, and I really can't wait to see what they do. This is like, they have not dropped the ball, at all here for me this season. I have been really, really enjoying it loads. Cool. So good.
Definitely. Really enjoying it. Only 4 more episodes left to go, unfortunately. But looking forward to every single one of them. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to make sure you get all the rest of our coverage of Daredevil, of all the other Defenders shows, of Marvel, Captain America, Civil War, obviously, which came out this week. You can get that by just going to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes or going to any Kingpin loving or Punisher loving podcast app of your choice on Android. Just search for Defenders TV Podcast. As I mentioned, episodes are also going up on YouTube. Find our YouTube channel. You should get a couple of images of us up there, a couple of videos of us up there, talking about some of the stuff that we're covering.
Like Medusa, we'll turn you to stone.
Maybe.
Don't look in the eyes. Don't look in the eyes.
But if you want to give us any feedback on how we look, whether we need some more makeup or better lighting, you can also email us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com.
Yeah, maybe we need heavy foundation, but if we do, you can also discuss that on our Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast. And of course, you can join our Twitter community as well. Just go to @DefendersCast and join us and tweet at us repeatedly.
Absolutely.
That would be absolutely brilliant as well. Just remember, Wilson Fisker's back, Nobu lives, and we may have Wesley back in the house.
Or a new Wesley, yeah, anyway.
Wesley. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye.